cultivating this sense of higher potential, it really helps us engage in a more healthy way in our day-to-day lives and our relationships, to be tracking toward that self-improvement goal, that personal growth that really makes life purposeful, that gives us that sense of meaning. This is part 2, looking at why one would want to meditate. We spoke briefly last week, just trying to debunk some of the high expectations we have. I spoke briefly about what meditation and mindfulness is, and essentially the definitions usually come down to being fully present, bringing your full attention to your internal and external experiences as they're occurring in the present moment, with an attitude that is characterized by non-judgment, openness and awareness of the current experience. So there are so many reasons why this is a good idea. To be in the present moment is very empowering, really, to be honest. Even if you don't like the present moment, being present with it enables you to change something or change how you're relating to something. And if we're not present, when we're not fully present, we're kind of engaging in a bit of self-delusion, and I don't like the idea of that. Personally, I much prefer the truth. Even if it's painful in the short term, I'd rather know the truth or be moving ever closer toward an understanding of the truth. So I'm not a medical doctor, but there's a long list of very well-established physiological benefits to mindfulness practice. If you'd like to see a summary on these, I highly recommend this little book. Ooh, can I make that not reflect? It's by Craig Hassed. The book I like is called Know Thyself, but he's got quite a few publications on this topic. He pioneered a program actually for medical students at a major university in Melbourne, Australia, particularly a mindfulness program to encourage better mental health outcomes for these students who are undertaking such a demanding program of study. But page 21 of this edition lists much of what we know. We're looking at benefits including reduced cortisol levels, improved response times and reflexes, improved perceptiveness of hearing and other senses, improved immune function, beneficial changes in our neurotransmitter profile, improved EEG patterns, reduction in blood pressure and heart rate, reduction in cholesterol levels beyond what diet alone would explain, and improved recovery from stress. So there's a lot of benefit that is pretty well established. Psychologically, we know it improves brain function in many areas, including executive function. There's a nice study from Slagter 2007. I'll include a link below that she looks at specifically at the attentional blink, which is a known phenomena in attention, and looking at very specifically how mindfulness practice improves executive function and control in that basic reflex. So looking at how mindfulness practices can really improve executive function in that area. So the studies that we're seeing now are particularly interesting because previously meditation was studied in the context of looking at the brainwave and functionality of monks, because they were the obvious known population to be practicing mindfulness and meditation, and we could see very different brain function amongst those individuals. But of course a monk lives a very different lifestyle to the average person, so the relevance of that data was limited. Nowadays we get much more information. The brain scan technology is much more readily available. So there's a lovely review that looks at more average people, average Westerners who are undertaking the program they've studied most would be mindfulness based stress reduction and mindfulness based cognitive therapies. primarily because these are quite structured approaches to mindfulness. So it's easier to quantify what it is that we're measuring, and to know that the individuals before and after were doing this similar activity in the middle. We know what we're measuring the response of. So the findings are quite compelling. We've got evidence for both functional and structural brain changes. There's a review from 2016 that looked at 30 studies using mindfulness based stress reduction, and it's quite conclusive that just 8 weeks of this secular mindfulness program produced brain changes with improved function in multiple brain structures: the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex, insular and cingulate cortex. So these are the things that are related to memory, executive control, perception, self-awareness, learning, and perspective taking. So we're seeing an increased activation in the prefrontal cortex and a decreased severity of response, intensity of response in the amygdala, the fight-flight kind of system. So that is quite fascinating. And more importantly, well, perhaps the more interesting to me, is that we're seeing an improved ability for communication between those two centers. The improved ability for the prefrontal cortex to send the messages back to the amygdala to down-regulate, to go crisis over, settle down. So what that would mean is the amygdala is meant to pick up on danger, to anticipate danger, to very quickly rally the sympathetic nervous system to respond. and what we then want, when the crisis has been managed, or if it was a false alarm, the crisis has been declared a false alarm, then the prefrontal cortex assesses the area and says, we're all good now. Activate the parasympathetic nervous system, return to a rest and digest kind of healthy resting state for the human body. So the fact that meditation increases this communication is really very exciting to me. 8 weeks is something that we can encourage people to do, to get such phenomenal results so quickly. And this, really is something that we've known from clinical treatment for quite a while, particularly if we look at modalities like dialectical behaviour therapy. That program was expressly designed to help people with developmental traumas that have left scars of poor emotion regulation skills and varying degrees of really unhelpful coping strategies when under distress. So the DBT, dialectical behaviour therapy, has centred very much on mindfulness as one of the core component skills. And I believe that's very key in the high success rate of DBT in treating complex trauma. For some time it's been a gold standard treatment. And clinicians have known this, that mindfulness is a key role in helping people cope with the world and their emotional world in a far more healthy manner. We get the ability to choose a response rather than be compelled into an unhelpful reactive state. And even if that starts, we're quicker to catch it and change. So that communication prefrontal to the more animal amygdala kind of reptilian brain stuff they would talk about is so important. And these are the areas of the brain that I believe, the prefrontal, increasing blood flow there, those are the things that define us from the animal kingdom. These are the areas where we know we are more than a set of impulses reacting to the environment. It is the humanness, the empathy, the perspective taking, the things that make humanity humane, as well as, I believe, the areas and things that help us bridge towards higher consciousness, which is another wonderful benefit from practiced meditation over time, to develop a sense of higher consciousness while staying grounded and present, being a better human, being a better member of society in many ways, but also being really aware of our highest potential. So this ability to be more connected to higher consciousness is an added benefit from longer term practice. And if that's something that interests you, then I would highly recommend this book from Amy Falconbridge, which looks very much at that element of science and wellness in the human body and higher consciousness. I'll include a link to that in the description below as well. But by cultivating this sense of higher potential, it really helps us engage in a more healthy way in our day-to-day lives and our relationships, to be tracking toward that self-improvement goal, that personal growth that really makes life purposeful, that gives us that sense of meaning and a good reason to get out of bed every day and have a go, to do our best and bring our best. So that is a little snapshot on the why of mindfulness and meditation, and there'll be another episode shortly looking a little more at how to get started and some ideas. Thank you.